Hi, Terry Michael, the Bible lady. The hand of God in Simon Peter. We're talking about Simon Peter, Jesus' disciple and apostle. And there were several Simons, there were several men named Simon at that time. And Jesus even had a brother, Simon. Brother Simon. No, no. There's an account, though, I want to tell you about the apostle Simon that took place in Capernaum. It occurred right after Jesus had been in the synagogue. And he cast out a spirit of an unclean devil out of a man. I guess demons will attend synagogues as well as church. But this took place on the Sabbath, of course. The spirit had thrown the man down and then came out of him. Afterward, Jesus came into Peter's house. This is in Matthew 8:14. And he saw Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. It's not a mother-in-law joke. No, it wasn't funny. Luke 4:38 calls it a great fever, a great fever. The brothers, Simon and Andrew, lived together with apparently Simon Peter's wife and his mother-in-law. Now, 3 of the 4 Gospels tell about this account. And in these different accounts, they talk about the healing. When we find Jesus touched her, he stood over her, he took her by the hand, and he rebuked the fever, and it immediately left her. And I'm sure this touched Simon because it's his family. So those who were mentioned who were there at the time were Simon and Andrew and James and his brother John. So as we know, Peter was usually in the thick of things. This is another event. In other words, he was the central major role in a situation. Yes, he did find himself there very often. And he was surrounded by or very involved in complex changing events. Most of us are acquainted with him walking on the water. So let's look at this. It happened right after Jesus fed the 5,000. So how do I know that? Well, because in 3 Gospels it tells you that. It says immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead. That's Matthew 14:22. And you can read the full account of the walking on water, 14:22 to 34. In the other 2 places, in Mark 6:45 to 55 and John 6:16 to 24, they tell about Jesus walking on the water, but they don't mention Peter at all. So why? I don't know, but maybe they didn't want to immortalize his failure, because it was. But you know, these were not super giant superhero men. These were just normal, average people. They were Jewish men who were following Jesus. So they weren't, nobody is. Nobody here on this earth is superhuman. I mean, we're human. So let's look at this. Peter did fail, but in losing his faith or having it fall short, as the Bible puts it, and doubting the Lord for another miracle, that miracle didn't happen, but another miracle happened. So the first miracle was Jesus walking on the water. Verse number 1. Second was Peter walking on the water. And third, there was the miracle of Jesus stretching forth his hand and catching hold of Peter while Jesus was standing on the water. You know how hard that would have been? I mean, to steady himself, and it would be standing like standing on a cliff and pulling somebody up, you know? Oh my gosh. So how did Jesus save Peter? Well, with his hand. He stretched forth his hand. And look at Peter's mother-in-law. Jesus took her by the hand. With Peter, Jesus reached out. So that we look at the hand of the Lord in both in the Old and New Testaments, and we see that when it says the hand of the Lord, it's expressing the power of God. In Exodus 9:3, the hand of the Lord brought a terrible plague on the livestock. In Exodus 13:14, it tells us, with a mighty hand, the Lord brought us out of Egypt. The hand. There are numerous instances of the hand of the Lord. And I love this one. Psalm 37:24. Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. Well, that's what happened to Peter, right? The hand of the Lord, he holds the 7 stars in his right hand. That's Revelation 1:16. That same hand that helped Peter. In Revelation 5:1, the scroll, which is written on both sides, sealed with 7 seals, is in the hand of the Lord. That's God. His hand is his power. So we focused on Peter and the power in these 2 instances, and I want to leave you with this question. How has the hand of God touched you? I would love to hear from you. Leave a message on my page on Facebook or on YouTube. I would love to hear what God has done for you. Until next time.